Hey everyone, I know you're watching the first video of many. We're doing weekly videos, going to be chatting with Grant about, esports entertainment, the industry, company, his background, different things that they're doing, all sorts of other stuff. But this first video is going to be learning, who is Grant, his background, what he's done, what he brings to the esports kind of industry and a bunch of other stuff. But first things first, Grant, how are you?
I'm well, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. No complaints. Look, well, let's not waste any time. Like, I want to kick it off. Let's
Excellent.
start before esports entertainment. Talk to me. First couple, bigger jobs. You mentioned you're a serial entrepreneur. Maybe some of the first successes, and then we'll lead that into kind of how you get into gaming. But I'll throw it to
Yeah,
you.
well, that's it's quite a. I won't go too far back in the annals of my history, but how it all started for me, I was in the satellite industry back in the early '90s, and I was at a conference in Las Vegas, at the satellite conference, as you'd imagine, and I came across some people at StarNet, which back in 1995, 1996 was one of the trying to launch the first B2B platform for online gambling. This one was a very hot item in the .com era. And I really liked the story, and they recruited me from the satellite business into the online gambling business. So I was the proverbial talking head. I was myself and a fellow named Mark Dolan. I was head of business development. And we took the first credit card transaction in e-commerce, online in Canadian e-commerce history through the Bank of Montreal. And we went on to sign 23 operators into the online gaming business. Now, that was a different time, of course. It was very much the Wild Wild West. People, back in those days, we had a mature industry, online gambling, that we were trying to, a mature gambling industry we were trying to bring online. And the question wasn't, do people like to gamble? We already knew the answer there. Vegas was, clearly well underway. What was the issue? Will sports bettors and gamblers give their credit cards to anonymous online operators? What we learned was for the first 6 or 7 years, no, they wouldn't. We signed up the operators. The operators didn't make any money in the early days. But nonetheless, we signed 23 operators, got them licensed out of Antigua. We signed all the Breeders' Cup tracks with the exception of Churchill Downs. It was a really exciting time. And then in 1999, the Canadian government decided that there was not going to be any online gambling in Canada. And I had the feeling this was going to happen. I resigned my position from the company, and a few months later, the company got shut down under the criminal code in Canada. And the online industry moved to Europe, the open arms of the Europeans, and is now a $100 billion industry, of course. And now, as we know, the North American market's trying to get it back with DraftKings, et cetera. I left the industry, I got into packaged goods and healthcare. I launched a company called HealthNet, and we coined the phrase, click, call, and come in, big marketing campaign. I think some retailers still use it today. I never got paid for it, but we had a number of large brands and names, Mother Nature, Sears, GNC, that ran off our program, off our platform. And then when I got a little deeper into healthcare, got into packaged goods, and we launched O24, which was the fastest growing analgesic in Canadian, retailers. It was voted the number one product of the year for the Arthritis Society in California. So a lot of successes there. Got on 27,000 retail locations, and I was working in that industry, and decided that I wanted to go to my own and help other companies launch. And so I started a consulting company, which I still have to this day. And I was just doing sales and entrepreneurial advisory. And I was approached by a coalition of Native tribes in Western Canada. This is 2014. And they wanted me to help them get into the online gambling business, like the Ganawagi outside of Montreal and the Mohawks, and license and host online gaming operators. And I took the contract. I was very interested in seeing what was new. So I started hearing things and searching online about esports, which was very much a subculture in 2014. It was obviously was around because it had been around for quite a while before then, but I hadn't really heard much about it. And I had the good fortune of getting a hold of a fellow named Ken Silver here in Canada, who is the president and founder of Esports Canada. And he introduced me to Alex Lim, who is the Secretary General of the Esports Federation out of Seoul, Korea. And we were on numerous calls, and they kept sending me to websites and things to check out, and went to Major League Gaming and all these various sites. And they said, listen, we could talk about this forever, but you got to come see an event to understand it. And that made sense to me. So, I had at that time in my mind's eye, I had a vision that I was going to go see a bunch of teenagers watching video games. And when I went to the StarCraft Championship up by the airport in Toronto, I was really surprised to see that there was 5,000 people, and they were all 20-something. There was very few teenagers, if any, in the crowd. It was a much older crowd than I expected. And the level of excitement, engagement, I couldn't even follow the game. StarCraft's a very complex game. It was narrated. I'm watching this and I'm trying to follow it. And I just looked around, just the level of engagement, the enthusiasm. It's like going to a rock concert that they're playing video games at, right? And I went back to the natives. I said, you need to be part of this. This is going to be huge. And they felt that it wasn't for them. They wanted to focus on more traditional gambling. And we shook hands and parted ways. Now, I should tell you, Ken Silva is still an advisor to the company today. And Alex Lim is a director of our company. I recruited him to our board. So, and I started the company. And it was quite a long journey from 2014 to when we went effective. It was a pink sheet company that I had to clean it up, get it fully reporting, get it listed on the QB, get a license, get a website up, invested hundreds of thousands of my own dollars, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, sleepless nights. I got it up, and I was going to take it off the QB and bring it to the Canadian Stock Exchange. And that was the spring of 2018. And for your listeners who follow the industry, that's when the Supreme Court ruling came down in the United States that online sports betting was going to be legalized if you had the regulatory guidelines state by state. That changed everything. I was on a road trip to raise money, and I was in New York, and I met with a guy named Steve Stein. He's the president or the chief executive officer at Jay Gunner. It's an investment bank in Manhattan. And he looked at me in the eye. He said, no way this deal goes to Canada. This is going to be a NASDAQ deal. Now, I was thinking we probably was a little early for us considering NASDAQ to be on a major exchange. And he said, it's just too hot. It's red hot. Esports everybody was talking about esports. Steph Curry was in, Drake was in, Fox Gaming. Everybody was talking about it. It was very trending upwards. And then, of course, with the Supreme Court ruling, as we know, online gambling was and is still a gold rush in the United States. And that changed the direction the company was going in. We had a small bet exchange. We were trying to make it work, but a bet exchange, like a stock market, requires liquidity. We just couldn't get over the hump to get the number of people, on the exchange to make it function. So we knew we had to raise capital. So we raised $3 million with Jay Gunner. We had to change our lawyers. We had to change our auditors because we had Canadian auditors, Canadian attorneys. We were going down that path. So we changed to RBB. We changed to Lakowski Brookman. We engaged, of course, with Jay Gunner, Dinosaur, Maxim. And over an 18-month journey, which ended, we were going out on the road show. I was in San Francisco when they started to talk about shutting down the borders. The U.S.-Canadian borders going to shut down because, of course, the COVID pandemic was everywhere. And I called an audible in the airport and jumped on a plane instead of going back to New York and headed back to Toronto. And the next weekend, the borders were closed. So we had just finished the road show. We had looked like it was going to be oversubscribed. And along with the COVID came the big Saudi-Russian oil fight. and the markets fell apart. And all the institutional investors who'd committed pulled out. So we had to reprice the deal. And what was going to be about a 90% institutional investor deal, they all pulled away, and we had to work the phones. I would say almost 10 hours a day for 5 weeks to bring people back, and we ended up being a retail deal. And instead of going out $6, we went out $4.25 because the markets were soft, and it was fairly stressful, as you can imagine. We got it done, and it was a titanic task, and we went effective April 14th of this year. We had a virtual bell ringing on the NASDAQ. We were up in Times Square. It was quite an exciting event for our whole team. Everybody's in there clapping their hands, and we're all jumping for joy. And from that moment to this moment, it's all been about execution for us. We committed to our shareholders that we would complete the transaction with Argyle, which you can see the name here up on the board in Sports Nation. We acquired a sports book in the UK, which I recognize isn't esports per se. They do have, during COVID, virtual game betting did take place. A lot, it was 55% of their handle, in fact, was betting on FIFA League and 2K. But it brought us 2 tier 1 licenses in the UK and Ireland, brought us 100,000 depositing players, 12 million in revenue last year. COVID obviously took a bit of kick in the teeth, this year, but by the end of this year, we'll be back up to that run rate. Brought us some senior executives, savvy gambling senior executives, our CFO and our chief legal officer. Then I committed to getting our Malta license finished. We did. We got our Malta license finished. So we have another tier 1 license. We committed to acquired EGL, which is a 10-year-old company out of the UK. They do £1 million sterling a year in revenues. And that is the company which we just did a deal. You saw the announcement this week with the AEG, which is the LA Kings and LA Galaxy organization. Where we are their exclusive tournament provider. And that's the convergence of sports and esports, where everybody's been talking about it, but this is the first transaction of its kind. So for us, we were the first US iGaming company to ever list on a major exchange in the US. We beat DraftKings, we beat everybody. So we were first. We are the first esports company. I believe we are still the only esports gambling company to have more than 1 tier 1 license. We currently have 3, and we've applied. We've received our skin in New Jersey. We're just waiting for approval from the New Jersey Gaming Commission. So we'll have 4. We'll be launching in New Jersey the Q1 next year. We've got the Esport Gaming League, which is the skill-based tournament platform, which we're pushing out very aggressively now in the North American markets, as you can see. And of course, we have our ViGG platform. You see right over my giant pumpkin here, we have Flip Sports there. The reason we acquired Flip Sports, it's our feeling and our belief that at this level, this pedigree, NASDAQ pedigree, you need to control your technology. And we're moving very quickly, multiple jurisdictions, and we had to get control of our tech stack. So Flip is a company that was formed specifically by gamers, for gamers. It's programmers who have an expertise specifically in building gambling platforms. So the new launch Vi platform, which have micro bets, in-game betting, will be launched this December. And that's the platform we'll be rolling out in North America. So I realize I've just dumped a ton on you, but that is, I've taken 20 years and crushed it into about 8-9 minutes there for you.